Terrific. Good afternoon, everyone. It is Friday, February 12th, and this is a meeting of Senate Education. Before we start hearing from some of our guests around their experiences at the Community College of Vermont, I wanted to just raise one topic, and that is this if you will, sort of shift in our state colleges. I know we have had some testimony, some conversations around what's going to happen, when it's going to happen, our role. And what I thought, and I'm really looking for input here from all of you, given that it is such a big topic and one that will be on the floor, certainly when the budget's brought out, and certainly one that is in the community, our communities a lot. I recommended to the pro tem that perhaps the best way for us to get Senate colleagues up to date is for us to have a caucus of the whole, or at least the opportunity for senators to hear directly from Mr. Prescott, I think one of the authors of the report, if not the primary author, a little bit from even maybe last year's Senate Ed Committee. But it's going to be one of those things that we are all going to have to vote on when it comes to the budget, when it comes to what kinds of dollars we are going to invest in our state colleges moving forward. And so rather than, I think, every one of our colleagues reaching out to each of us saying, hey, what do you think? I mean, we will continue to learn about it, but I think given the enormity of the shift and the financial investment, it seems to me that we do this as a caucus of a whole, or at least give people the opportunity, if they don't want to come to a meeting, that there's a time to have these questions. So I just want to throw that out to all of you to see if that's something you're all comfortable with. And maybe even a little bit about what you're hearing in your communities. Senator Hooker.
Senator Campion, we're certainly hearing a lot in our area of the state. And I think it would be an excellent idea for us to get from the horse's mouth, as it were, what the report is about and the interpretation that the committee has seen, because we're getting a lot of differing testimony, you might say, as to what is in the report and what it means and how it'll affect, especially the various parts of the state that have the state colleges in them.
Senator Terenzini.
Yeah, I completely concur with Senator Hooker. We're really here, especially with Castleton around the corner, we're getting inundated with questions and concerns and so on. So I think it's really important. We need to get up to speed and understand where we stand, because like Senator Hooker said, there's a lot of different rumors and half truths out there, and who knows what the real deal is. So,
yeah. Senator Lyons.
So I was going to agree with that, but also, do you think there's any, I have no clue how much time that caucus as a whole would take. It could take a half an hour, could take an hour. But the other issue that might be important to consider within that caucus, if it could be split in two, I don't know, is the waiting study. There's so many questions out there, concerns being expressed by that. So I don't want to derail the higher ed discussion. I think that's critically important, no question. But if there is time to throw in a brief update on what is or is not in the waiting study, that might be also useful. That,
sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So
no, I'm happy to bring that to the pro tem. I mean, I know that we are scheduled to have a a joint hearing with Finance on the waiting study. I believe Senator Cummings wants to do it a week from Tuesday. So that should give at least the two committees that are primarily responsible for that kind of work some additional information. And we agreed to do it as a joint committee. You know, given that it without a doubt, it'll end up in Finance, no matter whether, you know, when we pass it out, if that's what we decide to do. The other big piece, as I think I've mentioned, is what the House is interested in, and whether or not they would indeed pick up this work if we were to spend time working on it. And that's something that I know the Pro Tem is in conversation with the Speaker about. Senator Persley?
Was that last comment on the waiting study or something else about whether the House would take it up?
Oh, that was on the waiting study. Yeah,
Good.
that was on the waiting study. Sorry, I wasn't clear. That is indeed, I know that the House in the past has had some concerns. And again, I don't have an update, but I know that Senator Ballin and Representative Krawinski are in conversations. Yes, Senator Terenzini.
I don't want to interrupt the train of thought, Senator Campion, but another thing that maybe we are going to talk about, or you could help me, is the last week, for some reason, my email box has been inundated with people wanting to talk about S13, the pupil waiting study. Is that something that we're going to be? Okay.
Yeah, so that's what we were just talking about.
How did I miss that? I'm right here.
You know, we see you, that's for sure. No, it might just, what might have caused confusion actually is people have been just sending messages saying S13, S13, S13.
Okay.
Just so you know, that is the pupil waiting study. And we will have a meeting with Senate Finance, a joint hearing on, I believe it's a week from Tuesday, with Senator Cummings' committee.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
And that's good. No. And that'll give everybody an opportunity to sort of see what we think and what direction we want to go in. But I do know that this committee passed out a version of that waiting study last year. So it's.
I also did see Senator Chittenden laugh at me pretty hard, so I'm not going to forget that.
No, and I'll be honest with you, Senator Terenzini. You shouldn't forget it, because he'll be on the floor before you know it, and you and the family can be up late getting questions ready or whatever. Well, actually, it is one of the things about the Senate, and I'm looking to the senior senator from Chittenden to confirm this, but committee members don't really go after committee members. That is
No, that's true. That's
something
kind of the unwritten rule.
right.
Although if the committee member is reporting a bill from another committee that he might be on, then that's a different story.
Totally different story.
Yeah, that's
Totally
different.
story.
My internet connection might go out that day and it'll fall.
All right. Yeah, Senator Perchlik, please.
So on the waiting study, just want to be clear with folks that the study is the study and it's already out. And the study had some recommendations. So S13 basically implements what the study is recommending that we do. And I think there is I can't remember, there's a difference with the House bill. I think the House bill does it over multiple years, and the Senate bill takes a little different tack on how to roll it out.
Yeah. No, thanks for that clarification. I appreciate that.
And I just want to point out to Senator Terenzini that we may be here, but it's only virtual. So, it might make a difference.
Good old Rutland. If it's not the state senators, it's the issue with the library moving. It's something with Rutland County. All right. With that, thank you. We are now moving on to post-secondary education opportunities. And I see 3 of our witnesses are here. And please correct me if I'm mispronouncing your name, but Mr. Carrera, Mr. Abbott, and Ms. O'Black. Would you reveal yourselves to us? There we go. Terrific.
Hey, everyone.
Hi. Thanks so much for being with us.
Yeah, of course.
I think, okay, they're a little late, but I see our other 2. I see Joyce is here. Okay, Joyce, you got here just in the nick. We started at 1:15.
Oh, I thought you were starting at 1:30. I'm sorry.
No, it's no problem at all. You really did get here in the nick of time. So we can absolutely turn it right over to you to introduce the students that we were about to hear from.
Well, that is perfect. And thank you. I'm sorry about the confusion in the time.
No, it's no problem at all. Likely it's my fault. So
No, that's quite all right. So I just want to begin by thanking you for the opportunity to share with you a little bit about the Mcclure Gift. And what's most exciting is to hear directly from some of our students. And I think you heard from the Mcclure Foundation a couple of days ago, or well, yesterday or the day before. And Carolyn Ware and the Mcclure Foundation, I just want to acknowledge, are just amazing partners with us and have been for a number of years and have really helped to provide us with funding to do some pretty innovative and creative things. So we just are incredibly grateful to the Mcclure Foundation for their thinking and their partnership. But, you know, this particular gift came about, I think that the foundation was really looking at this in two primary reasons. One, to really acknowledge and say to the class of 2020, we care about you. We know that you've gone through a lot, and here we want to give you a leg up. And here's a way to either get started or to add to what you were already planning to take for the fall. And I think what has been amazing about the Mcclure Foundation gift is the clarity and the simplicity. It was, if you have graduated from a Vermont high school in 2020, no matter what your goals or your financial background or whatever, you are entitled to this. And you can take any course that you want. There was no parameters around. It's a 3-credit course or a 4-credit course. Any course that you are academically eligible for, you can take. So it was very simple. It was very simple to administer. And I think the message to the public was, it was easy to explain. And so, you know, working with the Mcclure Foundation, it was just really nice to be able to do that. And as you know, you heard from Carolyn that more than 600 Vermont students took advantage of that. And well, 80% of them, which is pretty phenomenal, have said they are planning to continue their education. We have more than 50% that are continuing their education this spring, which is pretty phenomenal given the COVID environment and everything that is going on. And we expect that number actually to climb, but it's interesting. We have more than 50% are enrolled at CCV, or about 50% are enrolled at CCV. If students went to another school, that information isn't uploaded into the National Clearinghouse until after the drop add period. So we expect that number will be higher because we know some people took a course at CCV and have gone to some other place this spring. So we're pretty impressed with what students have done as a result of that. In addition to the students that you're going to hear today, I've been working with Jeannie to post. We had the Mcclure Foundation shared with us a letter from a parent, and we got permission from the parent and student to post this letter. So you will see that. In addition to this, it's pretty heartwarming, and it came unsolicited to the Mcclure Foundation, and they knew we were having some testimony today. And Carolyn said, you know, this would be a great thing to share with the committee. So I would encourage you to take a look at that as well.
Great.
So, you know, Senator Campion said, you know, you wanted to hear directly from students, and we are, you know, it's always so wonderful to hear from students and their stories and what has made a difference in their lives and what they're doing with that. So we're excited to have 3 students today. I've invited Katie Mobley, who's our Dean of Enrollment and Community Relations, to sort of manage this because, you know, in a Zoom environment, you know, somebody starts to talk and then another person starts to talk and then no one talks. And so I've asked her to sort of moderate this in a way so that there's no awkward moments. And so she's actually going to call on students. And then in the end, we want to make sure we leave time for you all to ask students' questions. So we expect to spend, a little bit of time hearing from students, but then also allowing some time to have you have the chance to ask students directly. So with no other comments, I want to turn this over to Katie and take it away.
Great. Before we even do that, Ms. Mobley, I just wanted to thank you. And we are in conversations, particularly on Monday, with our colleagues in appropriations. And then we will hear, I believe, either Senator Kitchell or a designee from Joint Fiscal will come down and join us probably sometime next week to talk about options with, going forward. How can we, again, expand access, continue this kind of program, other possibilities that we might be able to do to give particularly middle and low income Vermonters access to higher education. So.
And Brian, I realized that I said that the McClure Foundation had two sort of reasons to do this. And one was to say to Vermont seniors, we care, we want to help you. Yeah. But secondly, they are a foundation that's very concerned about access. And so this was a chance to remove financial issues completely. And let's see what the uptake is in terms of Vermonters continuing education. Because as you all know, Vermont doesn't do well. We have a very high school graduation rate, but we struggle to have students continuing their education. And, we've tried for years. Dual enrollment's helping, but we've never been able to sort of make a huge leap in terms of those stubborn figures. And this gave us a window into thinking about, okay, if we did remove finances, could Vermont really turn those figures around? And I think it's a one-off for sure. Yeah. But I think that if we can keep trying that, I think we might be able to crack that nut finally. So thank you for taking this on.
Yeah, and thank you for being with us. Ms. Mulby, welcome. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. And I apologize for my tardiness. That is unlike me.
No one apologizes. If I am the one who should be apologizing. If there's any mistake ever, I can assure you it can be traced back to me. Not only anything with the committee, but anything here at my house as well. So please know that.
Well, I'm impressed that the students were here on time. Addie told me she was going to log in early, and really that's the most important part of this conversation. So again, my name is Katie Mobley. I'm from Burlington, Vermont, and I am the Dean of Enrollment and Community Relations at CCV. And I'm joined today by Anna and Addie and Nick. You will notice that Nick had the choice of either having sound or video. And so he has chosen to have sound today. And that was part of our thinking around me sort of drawing him into the conversation because we want to make sure that we're hearing from all the students. So Anna, I think I'm going to start with you, but would you mind just introducing yourself and sort of opening up by telling us a little bit about your high school experience, maybe pre-COVID, and then any impacts that COVID had on your experience?
Yeah, I would love to. My name is Anna Grace O'Block. I'm from the town of South Burlington, and I went to South Burlington High School, and I had a pretty standard high school experience. I decided to take advantage of the amazing program at CCV of early college. I was really set on continuing down a medical path, and so I was so excited to go to CCV and get a free year of college during my senior year. And I continued on, and it was a bit of a wake-up call in the fall semester. I was no longer at high school, but I really discovered a new passion in my spring semester of early college, right when COVID hit, that I loved everything about business and management and international business. And I was just so thankful that early college had really opened those doors to me, that I was able to figure out early on what exactly I wanted to do with my life for free, which was amazing. And so when COVID hit, my family, especially my mom, took it pretty hard. She has a residential cleaning business, and her clientele went down to pretty much nothing. And she is the executive director of a local cancer support nonprofit, Healing Winds Vermont. And her and a few of the others volunteered to no longer get paid until they were in a more stable condition. So the McClure Gift really came at the best time, where it took kind of the edge off of that CCV bill. And it was also at a time where I had realized I was not going to be able to kind of carry on with the college plans that I wanted to do. So I decided to continue at CCV through the summer and the fall. And with the help of the McClure grad gift, I was actually able to earn my associate's degree 6 months after my high school diploma. So very thankful to CCV.
That's amazing, Anna. That's a lot of hard work. Thank you for sharing that. Addie, do you mind going next?
Sure. It's an honor to be here to speak with everyone. So thank you for having me. My name is Addie. I am from Brattleboro, Vermont, and I started at CCV this last fall. My high school experience was not very pleasant. I grew up in foster care, and because of that, I was never really able to focus on school the way that I wanted to. And at 18, I wasn't able to graduate. I had to go and get a job and provide for myself. And I had never really thought about pursuing college because I had always had to be working and kind of taking care of myself. And then once the pandemic hit, I got laid off, which was really stressful, but I thought that it might be the right time to maybe start back into school. And so I found out about this program, and it changed my life. I made the phone call, got in 2 days later and started classes. And believe it or not, I made the dean's list this semester, which is hugely exciting. But I mean, the main reason for me not pursuing a college career was also because of finances. So really, I mean, it was like a gift from God for me to have this opportunity. And now I'm looking at pursuing a career in neuroscience, gotten really into it. And I am going to continue and get my associates here at CCV, and then the world is my oyster, and I'm so excited to see what's going to happen.
Addie, that's such a great thank you for sharing that and that enthusiasm. That's outstanding. And congratulations on the dean's list. That represents a lot of work. Nick, I'm going to invite you to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your high school experience.
Yes. Hello. I apologize for not being on camera for whatever reason. I have a bug with Zoom where if I have video, I don't have sound. If I have sound, I don't have video. It's gotten very annoying. I've tried updating.
No problem. We know what that is like. We're just glad you're here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It was, let me think how I want to start. I'm not the best at public speaking, even though this is through Zoom. So my experience with this has been extremely positive. I come from a low income family, and as of right now, I'm the only person who's gone to college except for my mom. And the biggest thing for us was finances. Like, how would we, pay for college? How would we have enough to pay for me and to, pay bills, pay electricity, get food on the table? And thankfully in high school, in my senior year, I was able to get my grades up to a point where I was able to do dual enrollment for the first 6 months. So I did originally VTC, did that. It was a lot of fun. That's when I realized how much better college was than high school. It was such a better experience. There was no competitions on who was better. It was just people of all ages coming to learn. And that really took off the stress of learning, because it wasn't a competition anymore. It was just people wanting to further their education, and that transferred over to when I started at CCV. I got in last fall, did my first semester, and currently I'm a part-time student because I'm trying to balance working at the same time of school. And during a pandemic, it's not really that easy. My mom and my little sister both have compromised immune systems, so coming in and out of the house, especially like for work, or even like if they leave to go get groceries and stuff like that, that's a pretty big risk. So I decided to stick with part-time just so I have enough time on my hands to balance everything. And the free class made it so I was able to use the scholarship money I got to pay for all my classes without having to tap in out of pocket, which was really helpful because it made it get to a point where I was like, man, I can do college. I don't have to worry about if I'll be able to pay for this because I'm eligible, and it's all worked out really well.
Nick, thank you so much. Did you mention what town you were from? I know, but I just want to make sure it's on the, yeah.
I'm from Essex.
Excellent. And Nick, am I correct in thinking, do you work in the healthcare field? Will you talk a little bit about that balance between school and the work that you're doing?
Yeah, mostly it's just carving out enough time to where I can do my schoolwork and have it be up to my own standards. I'm majoring in design and media studies, so thankfully it's very much hands-on. I'm doing as much freehand sketching, painting as I am like actual writing and reading. As far as like the work-school relationship, I'd say it's a little bit easier despite the fact that it's online for me, because even though we don't have any internet at my house, so I have to use a hotspot. But it makes it easier because I don't have to get out of bed. I mean, I do my schoolwork in the living room, but I don't have to go on any unnecessary trips. I can just do work, and then I can come home and I can have enough time to do schoolwork from the time that I get home to the time that I go to bed, and feel like I'm putting in enough time to both work so I can support myself and make money for myself and keep transitioning into being an adult, and then have enough time to be a student and absorb the knowledge that I'm learning from, further my skill as an artist, and then also just keep furthering my education, because that was the most important thing for me. I really liked high school. I like learning, and college has been surprisingly, it's been infinitely easier than high school for some reason. But it's all been vastly positive. So far, I don't have anything to complain about or speak negatively of, even though we're all stuck at home in a pandemic.
Thank you so much. That's really helpful. I will say, and I think Joyce alluded to this in her introductions, that on the college's end, this was a really easy program to administer, which I will just say is not always the case in programs. We got to say to every member of the class of 2020, this gift is for you. And so I'm curious. I heard, Addie, I heard you say, you heard about it and then you enrolled 2 days later. I'd love to hear from you, Addie, about sort of how did you hear about it? And if you were to tell someone about sort of engaging in college, what advice would you give them now that you've had this positive experience?
So I actually heard about it from my boss, who she has a spa here in Brattleboro, and she was also doing classes on the side. And she knew that, she had to lay me off and I was going to have a lot of time at home. And she'd always kind of pushed me to, go towards higher education. And so she came to me and said, hey, they're having this program. I know you're worried about finances, but this free class you should really take advantage of this. And so, like I said, I was really lucky. It was 2 days before the semester started, and I managed to get in and be in classes 2 days later. And so I'm really grateful for that. I've loved my experience at CCB, and coming from the community that I did, I know a lot of other foster kids, and there's a huge stigma. A lot of us aren't pushed to go for more. I mean, a lot of the time we're just expected to do the bare minimum. And so I've been communicating a lot with the people in that community to take advantage of this opportunity, because a lot of us really are also having to fend for ourselves, and financial situations for a lot of us are not ideal. So I've really been spreading the word to everyone in my group Facebooks, anyone I can, just, hey, this is amazing. You'll have so much support. And it's a huge blessing. So that's kind of how I'm marketing it, is let's show the world that we can accomplish something even after everything we've gone through.
So Addie, what had you done? I'm just looking here. Were you in high school and then you just graduated, or had you been in the workforce a little bit?
So it was my last semester of my senior year when you're when you turn 18, you can't stay in your foster home anymore. And
Right.
My family we didn't have a great relationship. So I had to make the decision, either I'm going to couch surf and try, and finish out high school. But I wasn't doing very well, to be completely honest. After everything I had been going through, school was never at the forefront of my mind. So I made the decision to drop out and get a job, get an apartment. And then, I wanted to get my GED. So I did that. And it wasn't until this year, like I said, with this program, where I had ever even considered that I would try to do something like this.
It's great. It's really great. Senator Hooker, were you going to ask something?
I always do that. The screen goes to something else when I try to move. I'm interested in the fact that you got your GED, Addie, and it was a while before this gift came online, and you were able to take advantage of that. Were there others in the program that were not 2020 grads, so to speak, that took advantage of the gift?
So you had to be a 2020 grad. So Addie, I'm assuming that you earned your GED within the year of 2020?
Yes, I did. I had completed 3 of them, but kind of put off the math one.
Okay.
I'm not a math whiz, so I had to do a lot of studying, and also, with just working so hard, I hadn't had time until 2020 to get that done. So luckily I passed.
And technically, and so it happened that it was in 2020 and you were right there to take advantage of the gift. And that's great. Another question, if I may.
Sure.
Joyce, Judy, I'm looking at the geographic spread, and we have 2 students from Chittenden County, 1 from down in Brattleboro. Can you give us an idea of what the spread was, either you or Katie?
Yes, I can. Actually, we were really thrilled. We had participants from every county, and the highest concentration was from Essex County.
Okay.
Which is, so we were thrilled at the level of participation. And I will say, I am so grateful to Addie and Anna and Nick, because I think, as Brian will say, we got this request a couple days ago, and we really scrambled to reach out. And so I'm so glad that they were able to. But we were very pleased. There was not a pocket that, all these students came from Chittenden County or all these. No, they came from everywhere. And we were particularly pleased with the number of students who came from Essex County, it's pretty it's not a very populated county. And so, we actually had that breakdown in terms of the spread. It was impressive.
And then one more question.
Please.
Do you have a breakdown of the number of students who took advantage of the program that were already taking courses, whether it was through dual enrollment or the free college year, and we're kind of adding on to their course of study, as opposed to students who were taking the course as a first time and a one-off?
Yeah, we have, I can answer your question in this way. We can tell you how many students of it that used the McClure Gift took only one course last fall, and how many took multiple courses. I don't have that figure right in front of me. Katie, do you? I can get you that.
Yeah, we can.
But what we saw a number, and I think for some reason about 50% sticks in my, but I can't remember, who were just simply taking that one course. And then we saw students who were taking two, but with a free course added one. And we also saw, which is interesting, not a huge number, but we did have a number of students who were enrolled at other colleges like UVM and added a CCV course to their load because it was free. And so they could, so they took a full load at UVM, like maybe 4 or 5 courses, and added a course at CCV. So we did see some students who, because also they could access it from wherever they were. So even if they weren't living in Vermont and they were going to school somewhere, they could access an online course. And so we had some who were enrolled in other schools add to their mix by taking a course at CCV. So it was an interesting combination. People used it in lots of different ways.
Thank you. And thank you, students, for sharing your stories. It's impressive.
Senator Perchlik.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I have some questions about, kind of around CCV and dual enrollment, not specifically about this program. Is that okay?
Yeah, please go ahead.
And a question for the students, and maybe the folks from CCV can answer too. And that, I just wonder what the students' perspective, because it sounds like everybody did early enrollment as well as, not early enrollment, early college, as well as this program. And I just wonder what the experience is when you have high schoolers in these college classes. And it seemed like, from my daughter did it, it seemed like some of her classes, she said there was a lot of high schoolers in the class. And I don't know if that's just, since it's a community college, you're going to have a variety, but I wondered what your perspective was about either the benefits or not of having a mix of high schoolers and other students in the classes. Does that make sense as a question?
It does. Anna, do you want to answer that? So I would say Addie did not participate, if I'm correct, Addie, shake me off, but did not participate in a dual enrollment or early college. Anna did, but do you want to talk about that experience?
Yes. Just as a high school student in a class with people of all ages, and just how my experience was, it was interesting to say the least, because on one end of the spectrum, you have the students like me who have never taken a college class before. And it's kind of all, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, like, we'll do whatever the professor says. We're a little nervous. And then on the other end, you have kind of these lifelong learners that have so much experience and inspiration and advice really to give. And I've learned so much. I remember this one woman in my human anatomy and physiology class, and I think that she was, 55, and she had been a single mother, and I think she's one of the hardest working people I've ever known. And there was a bit of a language barrier, and sometimes it was, kind of hard to understand everything that she was saying, or sometimes she couldn't quite understand us. But there was just kind of this really interesting bond that formed between her and the entire class, where we all learned so much from her and the professor. And it was just really interesting to see how all of these people are there not because they feel like they have to, or because, mom or dad or whoever said that they must go to college, but they're there because they genuinely want to learn more about the world around them, and they want to apply this in an amazingly useful way in their life. And I think that itself really brought me out of my shell and really gave me a newfound appreciation for education.
It really is
If that answers your question.
reciprocal exchange, really, students and teachers. It's great. Senator Perchlik, sorry to interrupt.
No, it's good. Thank you for that. And I guess a quick question for Joyce and Katie is, have you ever had a college student that's like, why do I have these high schoolers in my class? I'm assuming not, just from the experience from my daughter, because she felt like the high school students worked harder than some of the college students. But part of that is this, like a lot of the other ones had jobs and some of the high schoolers didn't. So, but has that ever come up? Like,
yes, I would say that, and, I'm looking at Senator Lyons, who, is a faculty member and can probably speak to this better, being on the ground. But I will say, this is one of the benefits of a CCD classroom. It is the rich diversity, and age is one of those pieces. And I think, as Anna said so well, is that, people come together in a class because it's united in the learning, and it sort of levels the playing field, because it doesn't really matter if you're 16 or 80, you're there to learn. And so I think that, this is one of the things that we do, that I think our faculty do amazingly well, is celebrate that diversity, and people can learn from each other in really, really significant ways. our average age is still in the high 20s. So even though we have more younger students, our average age is about 28. It used to be 31, but I will say about 50% of our students now are traditional age students. But we also have a lot of students, between the ages of 30 and 55, particularly people who are thinking of shifting careers. They've been hurt on the job. They've been, there's just a number of reasons why people come back. But I don't know, Senator Lyons, do you have something to say about that? Because it's just this melting pot of diversity in our classes. And I think faculty do an amazing job at using that. But I will just ask Senator Lyons if she.
Oh, I think you've done a great job.
For us.
Yeah, you've done a great job explaining it. And even my historical knowledge from Trinity College was similar. So the mix is enriching at both ends of the spectrum. So the students like Anna, who come in and are just hungry for learning theoretical and basic information, joined with people who have all that practical experience at the other end. It's kind of neat to see. And it makes for a very interesting, I don't know, maybe you two or three could talk about your classroom experiences in working with some of the non-traditional students. I mean, you have to have had some kind of interaction and picking up some of their skills and knowledge.
Nick, do you mind starting just so we get you back in to that question? Did you hear that question from Senator Lyons?
Yes. I think the best part about having a diverse classroom is that in some ways you get fresher eyes. I'd say the two experiences that stuck out most to me was the first one when I was in dual enrollment for Vermont Tech in my senior year. There was a guy in my class, he was like, I think either 60 or 70, and he was a veteran, and he was taking electrical engineering simply because he was retired, he didn't work anymore, and it was something to do. And as the weeks went on during the semester, because we were all in the same classroom pretty frequently, we got to hear stories from him, from what it was like when he was young, not only just being at war, but like how different the world was. And for him, VTC, the class was as much about, learning a new skill like electrical engineering, but also he said it got him out of the house. He said he loved coming in because he was able to do something every day, and he was able to feel wanted again, and he was able to do something that challenged him, and he was able to learn a new skill. The second experience that also stands out the most is recently last semester. So my first semester at CCV, one of my classmates, he's a full-time firefighter, and he is, I think he has like 3 kids, and he's on the job constantly. And in our forums, we would talk, and he said, this was for my, which class was it? Intro to Visual Communication. His whole thing was just, he wanted to have another skill besides his career under his belt, something that he enjoyed doing. He said he enjoyed doing art. He became a firefighter because it was something that was in the family. His father was a firefighter, and he would talk about like how he would mostly be at the station when he was doing his classes, like when we would do a Zoom lecture or when we would be doing our forums, he would be at.
Nick, I think we lost your, are you there? Yep.
Yeah. Addie, do you want to jump in? And Nick, if you get back, just jump in. Did you have an experience, Addie, with sort of a mixed classroom environment you want to share?
Yeah, not so much last semester, but this semester I'm taking sociology, and there is a huge melting pot of different ages in that class. Oh, I think Nick's back. I want to let him finish. I don't want to interrupt him. So,
Nick, are you there?
Yeah, sorry. It seems
No
like
problem.
I just
No problem.
lost connection for a minute. Let me think. I was saying they brought very unique viewpoints because it's, in each respective sense, they're different people, but both have very unique views on not only the world, but on education from, 2 different times, mingling with people like me who are out of high school and still learning about what life is. And then you have them who have been around for a while and they know what life is and they've built lives for themselves, and they're just coming full circle where some of us are just starting out on our journey to learning. And it's very refreshing because as much as I love talking to people my own age, it's always nice to get a different viewpoint on how people see the world, see education, how they have their own opinions about it, and how everyone learns in their own different ways.
Great. I'm wondering, and I think this might be for Joyce and or Katie, I'm thinking about how you in general market, and are getting the word out. I remember hearing Nick talk. I remember there was a comment at one point from President Judy, either this year or in years past, that, not as many men are taking advantage of CCV. And then Addie had her own experience as a foster child, and then, a GED student. Are there ways that you are marketing to these particular groups? And then Anna, in some ways, I'm not sure, again, just broadly how we're reaching certain groups.
Well, I can talk just generically, but probably Anna and Addie and Nick can probably tell you more about how they heard about it directly. But I will tell you, Senator Campion, this is a huge challenge. Katie oversees marketing and communications, and we appeal to such a diverse audience that trying to target our message to a particular audience, we are constantly thinking about, okay, how do we reach this group and how do we reach this group? Because it's a very different message to someone who's 17 than someone who's 60 and is going to switch careers.
Yeah.
And the same way we serve around 300 veterans a semester. Well, really trying to figure out how to market to particular groups is a constant challenge, and we are always, trying to figure out, okay, what message here, what message there. So, and then you add to the mix of, for years ago, if you hit radio, newspaper, and TV, you were good. Those were the ways that you did it. Well, now you've got social media and so many different platforms on social media, but you can't leave TV and radio and print behind. You've got to keep those going, but also, our audience, so much of our promotional stuff happens with social media because that's how students learn about us. And then by far the most important thing is relationships.
Right.
It's our relationships with people in school. It's our relationships with teachers who teach high school students. It's relationships with different, entities in the community. We are always, and then with businesses, because I think as Addie said, it was her boss who encouraged her to go back to school.
Mhm.
So, it's just a web, and it's, and we are always working at it. We always can do better. But Katie, I don't know if you want to add to that.
And I think
Joyce,
the American experience is now, if you move into a community, you are looking sometimes for a community college. I mean, they are part of, certainly the state's landscape, the country's landscape. I'm hoping more and more people, are thinking, hey, you look where you're living and around the community college for a variety of different things, classes, cultural opportunities, experiences, things like that.
One other thing, particularly related to the McClure Gift, which I think was pretty interesting, that we had as many students as we did take advantage of it. We did not ramp this up. The McClure Foundation came to us the beginning of June. This was, so we had COVID, we were 2 months into the COVID environment. We were at the end of a traditional school year. So in terms of working with guidance counselors and, trying to get stuff out to high school seniors, this was, so in, the beginning of June is when we actually, they came to us and said, we want to do this. And in 2 weeks we had stood it up.
Yeah.
But by then kids were graduating.
Yeah.
And so that was just a challenge in and of itself, because the normal channels through our school network were, summer's a different beast than the school year.
And just so you know, Ms. Weir from the McClure Foundation said that you were all incredible partners in that, they came to you at the timing that they came to you, and you were all able to get this ball rolling, and that was great.
Katie's group that stood up.
Congratulations. Other questions, colleagues? Senator Hooker.
That said, about the marketing and the timing, you had 600 plus students participate and that, I believe Ms. Weir said it was what, 10%? How many? 10% of the graduates? What if they had all done it? Would you have been able to accommodate them?
We would have been able to accommodate it. And quite frankly, that was one of the things that, so when the McClure Foundation, they are an extremely well-positioned foundation, but they, when they came to us, they were like, so do you think you'll have 200 or 1,000 or 600? Because, they didn't give us a grant and say, okay, we can only serve this much. Mm-hmm. They were committed to whoever came through. And so we could have handled it on the CCV end, but, we were curious to see how many people. So, this is one of the beauties of the CCV model. We can flex, grow, and if we have to pull back, we can. We just have a very non-traditional budget model that works really well. And this, I credit, this is the budget model that was established when CCV was established 50 years ago, to be able to respond to shifting environments. And I'm pretty grateful for that. So Senator Hooker, yes, we were ready. We can ramp up, we can add courses because, we have a lot of faculty networks, and we have a lot of people that are very interested in teaching for CCV, far more than we have courses for.
And Senator Hooker, I would just add that, when we had preliminary conversations with Carolyn Ware, she said, how many typically high school grads immediately the year after do you serve? And it's about 300. And then, we sort of got aspirational. And I will say, as a staff member, we thought, well, maybe we could get 400, 450. And when we had to go back to them and say, wow, we're at like over 600, it was amazing. It really, in such a tight time frame. I mean, I think had we had 6 months to have, Anna have the conversation with the school counselor or map this out, I have no doubt we could have tripled that number. But it was a little, to Joyce's point, the fact that they were willing to just say, just go. It's really easy to message something that's clear and easy and free. And it's more complicated when there's like, oh, you're interested in this, but okay, wait, do you qualify for this? Or it doesn't mean there isn't opportunity there, but this was the easiest thing to promote that I've ever been involved in at CCB. And it was great during COVID for sure.
Senator Persley.
On that note, and I don't know if either Addie or of the others from CCV know, I thought the state had done a special grant program specifically for those that are experiencing foster care. I thought I remembered a few years ago something passed that said the state basically is going to take the responsibility for those that don't, have the parental care. So, but it sounds like maybe I misunderstood what that was. Or is there a special program for foster care that give them full tuition at state colleges?
Is it okay if I answer, Katie?
Yes.
So I had looked into a lot of different programs. Unfortunately, like I said, I really only had 2 days to get it together. Not from my knowledge. I've been working a lot with VSAC, and I was able to obtain a lot of grants through them. Also through the FAFSA, because I am considered an independent student, I was able to get that extra funding, but I wasn't able to find anything through the state of Vermont for kids coming from the background that I was. I would say that VSAC is also an incredible program that has been invaluable to my ability for me to be able to help to find this extra funding, get help with, because I'm also trying to figure out how to fill out the FAFSA on my own, which is not easy. I mean, they've been incredibly helpful. Also, my CCB counselor has been amazing. But yeah, I mean, I kind of had to go out and search for that funding after I got in, and it was a little difficult, but I was able to navigate that through both my CCB advisor and my VSAC counselor.
Great, thank you.
Anna, I just want to bring you back into the conversation here. First of all, your mother sounds like an incredible person. The way you described her was really wonderful, and she must be incredibly proud. Did you do your entire high school, your senior year in high school at CCV?
I did.
You did. So you did dual enrollment all the way the entire year. And in part, did you say, was high school in some ways that senior year just not a fit, or you felt as though academically you wanted to broaden your horizons? What made you do that?
Well, from my freshman year of high school, I was talking to my high school counselor about graduating high school a year early. I was already a year ahead of my peers, and I kind of like to fast track myself. And he had suggested the early college program. And it was something that was kind of at the back of my mind until junior year, when I realized that high school, was high school. And I felt that it would be a much better fit if I went to college. And since I really wanted to graduate a year early, I realized that this was the most practical thing to do. It saved me money, and it got me amazing experience that then fast-tracked me to go on and get my associate's degree at 17. So
great. Any other questions or comments? Anything from our guests, Anna, Nick, or Addie, or certainly Joyce or Katie?
I defer to students. Do you have any final comments for this committee?
For those of you from Chittenden County, just know that Senator Lyons and Senator Chittenden are your two senators. And from Brattleboro, we don't have anybody here that represents Windham County, but Senators Ballant and White are your two go-to folks in the Senate.
Anna and I are also both SB alums. Go Wolves! So,
Senator Hooker.
I do have a question that is off topic now, sort of, but maybe connected. With the onset of the pandemic, we tried to help people retool. And I'm just wondering what kind of response CCV had from Vermonters who were looking to take courses to help them either get different jobs or, just try to change their directions.
And Senator Hooker, are you referring specifically to the CRF funds that we received? Yeah. We had over 600, 700 students enroll. And that again was over the course of a weekend to set this up. So we had a lot of, I think this is an indication of, once again, we were able to remove the financial barrier from investing in yourself. And we saw so many adults want to come forward, and they, and the testimony and the survey information about why they hadn't engaged earlier in education. It's interesting if you look at the graph, the number of people that said it's just about finances. It was huge. So we had a huge number of people that that took advantage of that CRF funding to sort of invest in their education and sort of figure out ways that they were going to pivot to something different post-COVID.
And it seems from your descriptions of setting up both these programs that there's a real need to look at the red tape involved in getting into other programs. So that may be something that we should take a look at as well to make it easier for students like these young people to get involved, and for people who are older to, have the supports that they need as life changes.
I think that's a really, really wonderful observation, because one of the things that I think, we, and I will use the collective in this group now, approach things from a place that we know about higher education. We know the language of higher education. We know what needs to happen. And, there are many people who have never been to college, aren't surrounded by people or supported by people who understand that language of college. Anything can feel like it's impossible, or it's just too hard to do. And so, the number of students that we work with who don't understand that that there's financial support to help them and how they apply. I think Addie referred to the VSAC counselor helping her apply to the FAFSA form. The FAFSA form is hard, and it doesn't, if after you've done it once or twice, it's not so hard, but the first time it feels really overpowering. And it asks for questions, it asks like for your parents' income. Well, someone like Addie, well, what do I do about that? So, and Addie, I'm just using you as I don't know how you dealt with that, but there's things that we have put in place that just make it really difficult for people to get through that system. So one of the things that we're always working, like our admissions process, I hope it's pretty straightforward for people. And it was great to hear that a couple people were able to do it, from start to finish within 2 days, because we have really worked at that to make the application, we're open admissions, but people still have to, they have to apply, but it's a very, very simple and hopeful, straightforward process, because, you get it doing that and you run into a stumbling block and people are gone. Okay, that's not for me, and they take themselves out of the game. So simple is really important. And I mean simple in terms of ease. It doesn't have to be simple, but it has to be easy, and there can't be glitches.
Yeah. Senator Lyons.
So, given that, and given that the McClure grant was so simplified, and folks could access the tuition dollars that they needed without a complex process. So I guess this is for the students. Once that burden was off your shoulders, then what were the supports that you found at CCV that enabled you to succeed? Because it looked to me as if there was a much higher success rate with the McClure cohort of students. I'm not positive about that, but it looked like that. So I'm just maybe Anna or Addie or Nick could just speak to what the supports were after the money was delivered that helped you? I'll start with Anna.
Thank you for doing that, Jenny.
Well, I think that my support stayed pretty consistent. My parents have always been a huge support to me, especially my mom. And I think that also my CCV advisor was a huge help throughout the entire process. Sometimes I would frantically email him and he would, email me back in this very calm, like explaining like, this is how this is going to work. It'll be fine. So I really appreciate just his patience, and also especially the professors, because they really took the time to understand everything that was going on and to translate that into their lesson plans, and understand that things are really wonky right now and that students are doing their best, but also knowing when to kind of give that nudge of, well, we can't let you, not do any work at all. And so I think really just having the support of the advising system and having the professors after that financial burden was taken away, it really spurred me to keep going and to look past CCV and everything that they had given me and look towards my next education step.
Great. Anything else? We so
Nick,
appreciate.
do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, once the McClure Foundation grants went through, I too had a bit of a frantic couple of times when I would email my advisor and also my VSAC financial advisor, because I also had to do a FAFSA, and I remember it took about 3 consecutive days where we had to do phone calls to explain how to do it. And I just remember how I always felt supported. My guidance counselor, she's always really nice and really warming and really calm. So even when I would email her like 3 times in a row, like, hi, so I don't know what to do with this form because it has my dad's income on it, and I don't talk to him as much, and he doesn't give me that information. She'd be like, okay, so this is what we can do to get around that. And the same thing with my financial advisor. She was really good with thoroughly explaining everything, because I wanted to understand what it was I was filling out, so that if anything like financially happened, I could keep track of it and be responsible for myself as well. And I just remember how, she didn't give me a hard time when I would ask questions, and she'd always be really nice. And if I needed something explained a little bit more in depth, because sometimes finances can be like that, she was always really accommodating. And the professors are really nice. Everyone's been really accommodating with my unique situation of not having internet, but having internet because I have a hotspot. I've had a few times where I've dropped out of a Zoom class on accident and haven't been able to get back in, and just like a quick email and being like, hey, so sometimes I may accidentally drop off the face of the Zoom and return 5 minutes later if I can get it working. And it's nice only having to explain that once or twice and then not, getting in trouble or getting penalized, and just having people be supportive and understanding that some of us aren't exactly in the most ideal situations for online learning, but we are still making the best out of it and doing good classes.
Great. Thank you all so much for being with us today. This was incredibly informative and interesting. You're all doing great work. We're all proud of you, that's for sure, and here to support you in any way we can as you move forward. And I hope you'll keep in contact with us with either, directly with the committee or with your elected senators and representatives it's important to hear directly from the field, and you've provided us with a really great look into CCV in your own lives, which is means a lot to us. So thank you all very much.
Thank you all for this time. And again, I just want to thank the students for taking the time to share your stories. They are powerful and so inspiring to all of us. So thank you. And thank you, senators, for allowing us to do this. It was fun.
You bet.
Great way to end a week.
Absolutely.
Thank
This
you.
was a dream come true for me. I'm really into government. So I was, yeah, this was really, I mean, I'm like starstruck. So I'm really excited. So thank you guys so much for having me.
Thank
I'm
you
honored to
so
be here.
much.
Thank you so much.
Our
Thanks,
honor.
everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Great. Committee, let's take a 10-minute break, and we'll come back, and Jim is going to take us through yesterday's work on a draft literacy bill, an updated draft based on yesterday's testimony. So welcome back. So Senate Education. Jim, thanks so much for being with us. Mr. Desmarais took yesterday's conversation, and he and I talked a little bit about it and tried to just get to another point on where we might advance literacy. And I believe this is on our committee page now, but I'm going to ask you, Jim, if you don't mind, to bring it up.
Yep. So
not to.
Can we share screens here?
Yeah, Jeannie will arrange for you to. There you go. And
okay.
So just quickly, I'll tell. Again, this is completely open to conversation, but a couple of takeaways for me, as Jim will take us through the statement of purpose, would be to provide supervisory unions and school districts grants to train teachers in the methods of teaching literacy, create a new literacy division within the Agency of Education, and then keeping the third, requiring that we had before, requiring that the Agency of Education review teacher preparation programs and report back to the General Assembly. We're having the Agency of Education in on Tuesday to hear their thoughts on all of these things. But, and of course, I, like all of you, just trying to get us to move the ball on this front. But it looks like we've got a lot of people supporting us and behind us. And while Jim is bringing up his screen, I'll also mention this is one of the.
You can't see that screen? You can't see that screen?
We see, it looks like an email, Jim.
Oh, really? What is going on?
Take your time. There it is. I'd love to have some more clarity on this before Tuesday's meeting with Senator Kitchell. And I know I owe all of you just a little bit of an outline to make sure we're on the same page before that meeting to make to get feedback, etc. So Jim, we're seeing it. It's there it is. Perfect.
Great. Okay, so for the record, Jim Desmarais, Let's Console. I will say that it's hard to follow that app he's had. Those students were amazing.
Yes, they were absolutely amazing. Yeah, but we have the utmost confidence that you are going to be a very, very good second.
Yeah, okay. Hardly the inspiration that they gave you, I'm afraid. Okay, so we're going through draft 2.1 of your committee bill on literacy. As Senator Campion mentioned, it replaces the requirement that supervisory boards have a policy on literacy with two things. First, it provides grants to SUs and school districts to train teachers in methods of teaching literacy. And second, it creates a new literacy division within the agency responsible for improving pre-K through grade 12 literacy within the state. And the third is the same. Third is the review of teacher prep programs has been unchanged. So, so going through to the findings are unchanged. So I won't go through those. And the bill language is quite simple. Section 2 says the sum of $500,000 is appropriated from somewhere, hopefully federal funds, for fiscal year 2022 to the agency. Agency shall use this appropriation to provide grants to SUs, to school districts, to train teachers and method teaching literacy.
Jim, you're in and out.
Agency shall administer.
Jim, can you hear me?
Oh, sorry. Yeah,
That's
can you
okay.
hear me?
Yep, it's just that the technology is in and out a little bit.
Okay. It goes on to say that the agency shall administer the grant program and determine which supervisory unions are eligible and the amount to be granted to each applicant based on its assessment of the relative need for this funding. So that's section 2.
Why don't we pause there for a moment? So this goes back to yesterday's conversation where it seemed that there are training programs, certainly through the Stern Center, but also throughout the United States, that teachers can participate in over a relatively short period of time that gets them ready and to teach reading. And so I just put in the $500,000, thinking that would get us, a couple of hundred teachers. I guess in looking at this language, it seems to me that, I'm putting it on the agency, but I'm open, on this. I feel like the agency has the information to decide which districts are going to need it over other districts. One thing we might consider is saying the agency shall administer the grant program and determine which supervisory unions are eligible based on need. We might add something like that based on, give them some greater specificity around where these would go. I mean, I think it's understood that we're looking to make sure that, the districts that need it the most will receive it. Senator Lyons.
Yeah, I think I was going to say something similar to that. I think some criteria for selection might be helpful. And then the other question I had is where we want to establish priorities across the state until all districts receive literacy training, and some districts have already had it, right? Like we heard about Williamstown and Randolph is going forward. And so that's all. I mean, just some collection of who needs it the most. I don't know how you do that one.
Yeah.
But is it based on any kind of literacy scores, or is it just simply, is it based on need? I mean, ultimately, we want to see this across the entire state. So there's options there.
Yep. I think, those are great points. And we can certainly ask the agency, Jim, if you could think also of some language where we might say that, again, we're trying to pinpoint districts in need, and then the agency might have more information on how to do that when they come in. And then I think Senator Lyons points a really good one around, we want this to continue until all the districts have received this training, not have it at, just hey, we did this for a year and 200 teachers may have received this, but there's still another 2,000 that need to. Senator Lyons, were you going to have a follow-up?
I was. And the other thing to think about is, do we want this to be an outright grant at $2,500 per teacher? Or do we want to see at least some minimal match through the school system? So they're applying in maybe a competitive way. I think of the the little revolving fund that we have for wastewater and something similar. I know that appropriations really doesn't like to have special funds.
Okay.
I don't know that we want to establish that, but so maybe some kind of match until all the funds are expended.
So,
Giving
yeah,
it all out at once to me is, I don't know. Do we think that school districts should be contributing in some way? That's just the question.
no, it's a good question. Senator Hooker, do you want to weigh in on?
Well, to that point, they're the ones that we heard about are contributing completely. So I think that to have us kind of supplement what they're able to do would be a help for on both ends. But I'm looking at, we're talking about until all of the districts have had this, but in the discussions that I've been, what I'm getting out of it is that this is something that is ongoing, always. And maybe we should have something in here that suggests that teachers need this kind of training. Maybe eventually they'll get it, through teacher preparation, or as Superintendent Bonestale said, on the job training is sort of the key to really learning how to teach. And so I don't know that I'd want to put things in that made this seem as if, well, we're going to do this, and once we've done all the teachers that are teaching now, that's going to be the end of it. But this is kind of a beginning of a requirement maybe that we have. And then one other thing with regard to the need and how do we find out? I mean, I'm assuming that the agency is going to be looking at test scores for kids in grades 3 and up. But what about those younger kids? I see it as kind of a twofold project and program. We need to be helping teachers learn to teach reading really young to the really young kids. And we don't even have, except at the local level, an idea of where the needs are. And then dealing with the teachers who are teaching the kids that have already gone through and have already either succeeded or not. And, having to have them be qualified to help these kids to gain their acumen in reading. So I guess I'm looking at this as kind of the beginning of a really long term, and this is what we want our teachers to be able to do. We want them to be able to teach reading.
Two takeaways from what you're saying. One, some language in there that this is the beginning of an ongoing process, and for us to get Jim some language in there that references that. The thing that I like, Senator Hooker, is that we don't specify age groups. In other words, I get what you mean. We really do. It's those early children that we want to, but I'm thinking of the 7th and 8th graders that might not have gotten it. And so that way you kind of, we give the agency and the district some flexibility around who they feel the need to train. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but I'm just trying to point out, I think that the data that we have in the agency is going to be from sort of 3rd grade up.
Yeah.
Whereas, we also need to be cognizant of those little ones.
Absolutely. Senator Lyons.
Yeah, no, I think what Senator Hooker is saying is absolutely on target. But remember, there is a study in there about pre-service training. So our goal, this is the kickoff to get at some faculty development, teacher development. And the question is, should we say something about pre-K? But then the whole bill is meant to go from pre-service to postgraduate development, but we're doing it in a stepwise way. We're starting out with a little grant. We're asking the agency to identify where the needs are across the state. And the implication is that this is the first step in providing literacy support and development. But we're also addressing pre-service as well, ultimately. So it's pre-K to whatever, 12, and pre-service to post-grad development. And I'm sorry I'm not more articulate today, but there it is.
Oh, I think we've got it. Okay, other comments or questions about that section? Seems pretty straightforward before we move to the next section, which is general fund dollars specifically targeted at the Agency of Education.
Yes, and this is pretty broad language right now. We don't have much detail, but it says a sum of X is appropriate from, I guess, the general fund for fiscal year 22 to the agency to create a new literacy division within the agency responsible for improving pre-K through grade 12 literacy within the state. I think we'll need more, obviously, detail from the agency as to how to craft this.
And senators, I was, when Jim and I were working on this, I just thought, here's something broad, here's something we can share with the agency on Tuesday, and find out again what they're doing in literacy, and get their thoughts on whether or not they believe they're doing enough, whether or not they would welcome these kinds of funds. I would think that they would, based on the little bit that I know of the agency right now as it relates to having folks in the field working on literacy, and seeing if they can work with us on this language a little bit. But I know that, and I've said this before, and I'm sorry to repeat it, but I know that Senator Kitchell, one thing that she has said to me now a couple times is giving the agency some direction as it relates to funds is something that committee seems interested in doing as much as we possibly can. And whether it's the, really targeting, which we can do through the general fund and saying you shall, or with, trying to figure out a way to do it with some of the federal funds. Some of the federal funds, are going to be specified and directed in areas that they have to go in, but there might be some flexibility. Any questions about that rather broad, but I think perfectly good language that kind of gets things going? Senator Hooker, please.
I just don't want the establishment of a new division to eat into the monies that are being appropriated. That's if the agency already has something, then somebody who can look at this, then maybe that's a better way to go rather than having our kind of small, start here eaten up by administrative costs.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I think we'll look to the agency to weigh in on this. If they come in, this is sort of just a draft that, they come in and they say, listen, we have 30 people in our literacy department. We can strike section 3 and just focus on that section 2. If it's the people that are doing civics and the people that are doing foreign languages are also doing literacy, well, I think it's time for the legislature to take a step and say, this shouldn't be business as usual. We really believe, some people working on literacy are key to build a department, and to get people out there, not just to do, bureaucratic stuff, but to actually get people out into the field to either train teachers, to teach children, or whatever they need. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and to that point, maybe there should be a direction towards, as you said, training, having somebody if this is the path we want to take,
Sure.
somebody at the department, the agency, that is going to be a trainer. But it seems to me that, like, I'd rather see the money go to the teachers.
Yeah.
To go take the course that's already established at some place like the Stern Center or something.
Yeah. Good point. Everybody, Senator Perchlik, are you? Yep. Sorry.
Yep. Maybe this is the section. I understand you're just kind of putting out there as a trial balloon, which is fine. But I wondered if this. I haven't looked through the whole draft, but we got some testimony about the need for vision and clear objectives from the agency. And maybe this is what this division would do. But if we don't do a division, if we don't have them create a new section or division, maybe we would want them to at least generate the vision and objectives for literacy, that kind of literacy plan, if you will, that we heard from the superintendent, which I thought was a good idea.
That's a great idea. And if Jim, you would include that, I think we would all agree that, directing them, if we were to move in this direction with either, whether we're moving in the direction or not, I guess, of creating a new section in the agency having to do with literacy, but we want the agency to put out some vision and direction as it relates to this topic. And Senator Perchlik mentioning what we heard from the superintendents, I think it would be great to, get their eyes on this again, also as we move forward, and see if they feel like we've captured something here. Okay. Moving on.
Well, moving on, there's something left that's new, but just to remind the committee that we have section 4, which is a review of teacher prep programs by the agency and report to you on to what extent these programs prepare teacher candidates to use science-based literacy materials and programs. And so you have 3 sections, and then on passage is the effective date.
Okay. Senator Perchlik.
Do we know what science-based literacy programs means?
So I think I can describe, if I were on the floor right now, what science-based literacy means. I read an awful lot about it last weekend, and I'm trying to think if I can pull it all out. But basically, is in the simplest form, and please someone correct me if I'm wrong, it is a combination of teaching phonetics with comprehension. And those two things together, from my research, is a simple definition really of science-based literacy. But I think pulling that apart a little bit more is certainly worthwhile, and making certain that everybody is in agreement with my definition.
I just thought that was one of the terms. I don't know if it was Ms. Bonesteel or somebody else that talked about some of these terms are kind of used differently by different people for different reasons. And I couldn't remember if that was one of them, or I think the Stern Center used a different one that I've heard that people kind of disagree with, not disagree with it, but they say, oh, that's the Stern Center calls it that, but we call it this. And so just wanted to be careful of the terms.
Yeah, maybe we, yeah, I remember that, and someone was saying how all of these descriptors mean the same thing, but they're different. So it makes it sound confusing to people. How do we get around that? I don't know.
Yeah, no, it's a great point. It's
So do we define it in the bill?
well, we could maybe
We could have Jim define it.
You could.
Yeah.
we could ask AOE what they think it means.
Yeah.
They're going to be doing the report.
But no, I think that's a great point that you both bring up. And it is so true. With my limited experience with literacy now, so many different conversations, so many different reports, so much different research out there. and people probably are using certain words, and they're meaning different things to different researchers and different professionals. So I think getting to the point, and maybe Jim, you could take a stab at a definition, and then we'll see what the agency thinks of it.
Sure. Yep.
If you're okay with that, that would be great.
Yep.
And I'm around also. I can always help in any way with any kind of stuff like that. Given that I'm not a lawyer, but like to pretend sometimes that I have some legal, which basically come out of my degree from Google. Anything else? Any other direction we want to give Jim? Senator Persler.
I was just looking at Chelsea Myers' email and just seeing if we had captured some of the things that they had suggested about the data collection. Mm-hmm. Is that in here? Did we talk about, or is that just kind of what we want the agency to do? Because we talked about, the agency had originally recommended the Lexile scores, and we had that whole discussion. And maybe it goes to this vision and objectives, but we talked about, well, how do you know if you're making progress in that K through third grade? Because the third grade, they do the SBAC, but we don't want standardized tests below third grade, but there are measurement tools that the different districts could do. It sounded like what I was thinking we were doing in committee was getting to a point where we'd be saying, how is that data collected and then fed back to the teachers in a way that makes their teaching better? And
so not necessarily data that's collected and reported to us as a way to measure success, but helping facilitate what teachers receive and making certain that they can, now it's coming back to me a little bit, making certain that they can take that data and work with that data.
Yeah, they talked about getting that data from the pre-K through third grade and how helpful that would be, and then do benchmark assessments and collect the data to be used to drive targeted professional development, which I think what the grant program is doing. So we want to make sure that the data we're collecting is informing the kind of training that we need. I think one of the issues that I remember from last time when we had the Stern Center in and others is that, like, the Stern Center has a particular way of teaching literacy, and that's really good for particular students. But for other students that have different issues, there's really a different program. And, depending on what your literacy problems are, you might want to have different training. And I just want to make sure that we're aware of that as we're thinking about this. But just over in general, they talked about collecting data and using that data to inform their professional development.
Yeah, okay, let's mark it. And Jim, maybe we can work on some language on making certain that we're capturing the data collection information that Chelsea and others were mentioning.
Does Jim have that email? Because I looked for it in the committee testimony, and it's not in on the page that I saw. I mean, because we got that email, and you forwarded it to the committee. I don't know if Jim ever saw that.
I've got that. Yep.
Yep. It's interesting. It also just goes back, and we'll have to pull this apart, I think, with the agency a little bit and the superintendents, is saying science-based literacy materials and is that too tight? I mean, I still think I need to better understand whether or not that fits all students, or if it does just, fit the needs of particular students. Senator Lyons, your hand's up.
Yeah, I mean, the discussion is good. I had written down the data issue myself, and so I agree, getting the baseline for benchmarks is important. But then in looking at the grant process, we probably want to, and the agency may bring this thought in, but we want to have some outcomes-based assessment going on so that we can determine that we're moving beyond those initial benchmarks. So there's a 2 or 3 step process in all of this. It may well be that some of the decisions about how to appropriate or how to give out the grants is related to the readiness of the district to do that work. But we still need to have what Senator Perchlik was talking about very definitely, and then something in there about improvement or internal based outcomes assessment. There was something else. I forgot what else it was, but somebody else will think of it. That's it.
Okay. Senator Hooker?
We talked a little bit about the data literacy initiative that AOE is kicking off. And I think that, that could help us to understand what, they have in place already and what they're planning to do. But, and then again, going back to Ms. Bonesteel talking about the data collected for the pre-K to 3 kids being done at the local level, and the teachers being able to inform their instruction based on what they're finding. The question is, have the teachers been trained enough to be able to assess and to target the needs of these kids without something without having gone through some kind of training themselves?
Right, and that's, I think, hopefully something we'll find out from the agency, and also what kind of training programs we might be paying for them to have. I mean, I'm hoping it would include, again, teaching kids how to read first and foremost, but like you're saying, interpret results that they're getting and identifying, I think, as Bonesteel and others said, as data comes in and as they're teaching, how to make changes, how to move in one direction over the other, that sort of thing. Does that make sense? Senator Lyons?
Oh, I just thought of what I forgot.
Yeah.
No, it is another question about when the agency comes in to ask them, how they'll go about making decisions around the new division.
Yeah.
And if they will be bringing in some of the experts that we've talked with to help define what that division will look like. And what is science-based literacy within that division.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is. It's complicated stuff.
Yes,
and I feel like it's the best, and maybe I'm wrong, that if we kind of keep it broad, the more specific we get, it could make it more challenging for others to implement and make the decisions, given that, I mean, I'm not an expert, but the other thing that all of this is raising for me is, how does the legislature evaluate some level of success or failure going for? How do we look back and say, Senate Education, with that bill that they passed out 10 years from now, knocked it out of the park, or, we are still in the same position that we were. And I'm not sure, having heard from the superintendents and others, that the testing that happens out there right now is the best and the most effective way to measure. But Peter Drucker, the great management guy, used to teach at Bennington College, and some of his stuff is always hanging around. And how can you manage what you can't measure? And we have to be able to figure out some, more importantly for the teachers and the principals and others involved, but even for all of us, how can we manage, and maybe a better word is, how can we assist what we can't measure? Senator Perchlik? No, okay. Jim, does this give you something from some additional things to work from before we see another draft?
Yes, what I'll do is I'll turn on the draft. I think what I picked up from this conversation
Great.
is that we need to have a section for the AOE to create vision and a plan for literacy improvement.
Yep.
We need to define what science-based means. We need to have a section on data collection. We need to have
Yep.
some report back to you on outcomes. And we need some criteria for the grants. That's probably going to come more from the AOE than from me.
I think you're right. I think you're right.
Let me get that together. I'll send it to you, Chair Campion, over the weekend, and you can take a look at it and see.
Great.
Okay, or whatever.
Great. I don't know, what's I think natural resource and energy may have, under Senator Bray, not under Senator Lyons, the most drafts ever of a bill. I think we were up into, at one point, gosh, I think we had a bill at one point, it was like draft 35. So we're just getting started. I mean, yes, Senator Terenzini, please.
I hope it's appropriate, Senator Campion, but I wanted to publicly thank Jim for his hard work. This individual helped me on Saturday and Sunday this past week. Like, I don't think he takes a day off. And so I wanted Jim to be recognized for that, because it's incredible how much is on his plate, and he's the man. So thanks, Jim.
Well, thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah, no, thanks for saying that, Senator Terenzini. Speaking for all of us, it's an incredible job what you do, and we're so grateful that you decided, as I recall, to leave the private sector to come join the public sector.
I did that, yes.
You did indeed. I remember when you first arrived. And you were completely new to the field of education policy, as I recall, or was it something you had a little experience in?
I had none, no. I came in December of 2015. I walked into it.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. Well, we are lucky you did. And we also hope that you get some rest this weekend. So, being a long weekend, and you have our full permission.
Thank you.
If you need it.
Does that mean we get Monday off?
Monday off doesn't seem to be working for.
That doesn't work for us.
Yeah. But it should work for Jim. So glad you said that, Senator Terenzini. Thank you. Anything else before we shift gears? Senator Hook.
Just quickly, with regard to science-based reading, I'm looking at sort of a definition of it, including phonemic awareness, phonics, reading fluency, vocabulary development, reading comprehension, and looking at, how are we going to evaluate the progress that's being made when we're using standardized tests with Lexile scores. But just by bringing these elements into the teaching of reading, shouldn't that sort of raise even the Lexile scores? And even if that's the only thing we have to evaluate at this point, we should be able to see some progress, it seems.
Good question. I think that's a good question for the agency and our superintendents. It's, I'm inclined to think you're right. Listen, we all remember standardized tests. I didn't knock them out of the park. I mean, maybe you all did, but it showed something. I hope they're under lock and key. I hope they're not going to pop up the next election cycle, but they were what they were. I think they give some guidance, but like I said, when we were talking with folks, if our rate is, let's say it isn't 50% of third graders that are struggling, let's say it is only 20, it's 25, that's still a lot. And it's still, we can hopefully make some progress by getting resources and out there to teachers that need them. So, okay. If people don't mind, let's just take a 5-minute stretch, and then we'll finish up with looking at some church and state language that Jim has taken us through. There we go. Okay, welcome back to Senate Education. Jim, I wondering if you would please bring us back to the topic when we were talking with Professor Teachout and yourself around some of the issues we're dealing with around church and state. I know you have put together some options for us to consider around what we might do to protect that line, if you will. And so I'm wondering if you could just give us an overview of your thinking and why this direction you think might make the most sense, and then a little walkthrough of the bill. And we're not going to be making any big decisions today, but it will just help focus us, I think.
Sure. Yep.
Thank you.
So for the record, Jim Davis, Counsel. I think this area, because it involves a constitutional principle, which has been interpreted many times by the courts, is frankly quite confusing to understand. So before we go through options and language, let me just help define, if I could, the problem you're trying to solve here. And the problem you're trying to solve here is that the Vermont Constitution has this clause called the Compelled Support Clause, which essentially says that citizens of Vermont cannot be compelled to support any religion. So, so the way that's been interpreted by the Vermont Supreme Court in a case back in the 1990s called Chittenden Town, the court said, yes, you can provide tuition, public tuition, to religious schools, but you have to be sure, you have to take some safeguards to ensure that those funds are not being used for religious instruction. Okay, so so you have that guidance from the Vermont Supreme Court over 20 years ago, and the problem that we have is that districts have been denying use of public tuition for religious schools like Rice High School. They've been denying it because they are religious schools. So they haven't been applying a safeguard against a use. They've been saying, as a blanket statement, we can't fund you because you're a religious school. So the Supreme Court has held you cannot discriminate against a religious school solely based on its stats. So the recent cases that have been coming up in Vermont, we've seen, there have been some holdings that basically have held that Vermont is discriminating against these schools based on their stats, because that's what the record has shown in the court record. It shows denial by districts on that basis. And what hasn't happened in the 20 or so years since Chittenden Town was decided, there's been no state directive going to school districts as to how they can establish safeguards against improper use. The districts have been on their own to figure that out, or just to deny funding based upon stats, which is unconstitutional. So that's the problem. The problem we have is we're in a situation now, we've got court cases that are in live flow here, which are coming against the state because we really haven't defined what those safeguards look like. So what the AOE did in February of this year is they issued for the first time non-binding guidance to school districts as to what those safeguards might look like. The AOE says in its guidance that that it has no authority to bind school districts because it's really a district issue, not an AOE issue. So it's given some guidance, and then Professor Teachout came in and testified as to a process for certification. You heard from him, which is part of the guidance that the AOE gave as well. But I think what an option for you is to give direction to school districts saying that you shall provide funding to these religious schools if they provide the district with a certification. The funding is not being used for the purposes of religious instruction, worship, or propagation. So what I have here for you today is a bill that gives that direction to school districts. And with that direction, the state is now saying to school districts on a uniform basis, here's how you do it. And therefore, it will allow school districts to fund religious schools if they get the certification and they're not using those funds for improper purposes. Let me pause there before I go on. Is there any questions? Any questions about that framing?
Any questions? So are we putting here, Jim, in effect, creating a certification program?
Yeah.
Senator Terrence, do you have a question? I saw you just pop back. Okay.
So let me share my screen for a minute. I'll come back to, we talked as well about the idea of conditioning funding on application of anti-discrimination laws, right, to these schools. I haven't put that in the bill, and I'll explain why. But let me go through the bill first, and then we can talk about that element of it as well.
Thank you.
I'm going to share my screen if I can. Yeah, screen too good. And share that. I'm going to bring that over. Like this. Okay. Can people see this?
Not yet. There's
No?
just the old Windows. Is that the old Windows? I don't even.
It
Let
looks
me
like,
try again.
it looks like it wasn't opened up,
Share
I think,
screen.
yeah.
You need to open the document on your desktop screen.
I did that, yeah. Yeah, let me find it again.
You take your time while you're doing that. I don't know if anybody has seen the perhaps the worst or the funniest technology mistake that I've seen in a while with the attorney who had the cat filter on. Has anyone seen that?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, there is nothing that tops that one. I will send it along.
I sent it to Dick Sears.
Oh, you did?
My daughter sent it to me like at 6 o'clock in the morning, and then I said, "Oh my God."
Yeah.
Well, I saw in the news, I think it was no less than a week ago, and I don't know if it was a Senate or House committee in New Hampshire, but there was a legislator whose cat continued to get in the screen, and that caused some frustration for committee members to the point that they're trying to do something to ensure your pets are not seen in the New Hampshire legislature.
Really? Because
Yeah.
you know, my cats, one of my cats will sometimes jump behind me, and Senator Pearson in finance, you know, his cat when I was on finance would always pop in, and other cats. Yeah, that's funny. Where people, I wonder why they want to stop seeing pets in the screen. Maybe just because of that.
I didn't dive into it. My kids walk in front of the screen 4 times, 6 times a day. So I mean, look at.
Right. Yeah.
How can you be upset? But
Last year in this committee, we saw a lot of pictures of Senator Ingalls' cats. She just would show them to us around the committee room.
Senator Ingram's.
Ingram, yeah, not Ingram. Ingram.
Yeah. Jim.
Yeah, I'm having trouble here. I'm not sure why. I'm sorry.
You take your time. If it's better for you, we can always follow along.
Is it on the committee?
I believe it's been posted.
Yeah, if you don't mind, that would be.
No, that's fine.
This time that's probably a better way of doing it. Okay,
Does everybody have it? Can everybody find it? I have a.
No, which one is it on there?
Let's see.
Senator Campion, if you give me a couple of minutes, if you want me to post it, I can.
I don't see it there.
If you have not posted it, yeah, that would be great.
I have posted it, but
Oh,
do
you-
you want me to try to share it?
Where is it on the committee page, Jeannie?
It's under Jim's name, second.
It should be under Jim's name.
Okay.
I think it's the second one. The first one was the bill
Yeah.
that we just finished, and then,
Okay.
Got it.
Oh, great. And great. Everybody have it? Okay, great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, good. So I will go through this draft. It is a draft that could be committee bill. Right now it's under Senator Campion's name. And it proposes to prohibit school districts from paying tuition to certain schools or programs, regardless of religious status or affiliation, unless it receives certification from that school or program that none of the tuition for which payment is requested has been or will be used to support religious instruction or worship or the propagation of religious views. So there's findings and purposes. Let me take you through those because it emphasizes again what I said at the beginning. So first you have the Vermont Constitution has the Common Support Clause, which provides that no person can be compelled to support any place of worship contrary to the dictates of conscience. And then in Chittenden Town, decided back in 1999, the Vermont Supreme Court held that a school district violates the compelled support clause when it pays public tuition to a religious school in the absence of adequate safeguards against the use of such funds for religious worship or instruction or the propagation of religious views. And it says the purpose of this act is to define adequate safeguards that a school district must employ to ensure that public tuition is not used for religious worship or instruction or the propagation of religious views. So Section 2 amends a section of statute dealing with the payment of tuition to schools. So A is not amended, but what A says is that a school district shall not pay the tuition of a student except to a public school and approved independent school, and independent school meaning education quality standards, a tutorial program approved by the state board, an approved education program, or an independent school in another state or country approved under the laws of that state or country. So you can pay tuition to that list, okay? And what B says is that a school district shall not pay tuition under subsection A of this section to any of the schools or programs identified in that subsection, regardless of religious status or affiliation, unless it receives certification from that school or program that none of the tuition for which payment is requested has or will be used to support religious instruction or worship or the propagation of religious views, provided that public schools that receive tuition from a school district are exempt. So we're not requiring public schools to certify this because they are public schools. For any independent school, tutorial program, etc., listed in A, this certification would be required. And then it goes on to say, instruction in religion that focuses on the history and teachings of various religions shall not be deemed to support religious instruction or worship or the propagation of religious views, provided that the instruction is not designed to and does not support religious instruction or worship or the propagation of any one religion or theology or group of related religions or theologies. That is designed not to prohibit schools from offering survey courses in religion.
Right.
That language might need to be tweaked a bit, but that's the idea behind that language.
I mean, that
And I
could
want to
even,
go over to,
Jim, that could even be, a school offers, Thetford Academy offers a course in the New Testament. They can still do that. I mean, or does it have to be survey or?
well, I'm not sure. So that's what we need testimony, I think, on that. You need testimony on that because I wrote it to be kind of survey-like, more or less.
Okay.
I'm not sure how to write that. If it's a course in a specific religion, it gets to the point where it seems like religious instruction. So I'm not sure how you draw that line.
Okay.
So I wanted just to mention Professor T-Shot's testimony. He recommended this same certification in his testimony. And he also mentioned that the certification approach is simple and practical. And he says the great advantage of certification mechanism is that it avoids the need to get into any great detail about which expenditures might be eligible for tuition reimbursement and which might not be. And then he goes on to say that the mechanism of certification is a familiar mechanism used by both the federal and state governments with court approval. So this method we're talking about is been approved by the Supreme Court and by various courts. So it's a tried and true method of providing a safeguard. So I'll pause there before we talk about discrimination. Let me pause there in case you've got questions on the bill language itself with the approach.
Any questions? Senator Terenzini.
Thank you, Senator Kimmy. So Senator Hooker understands I'm thinking of locally, we have a Catholic elementary school and we have a Catholic high school. And, if you decide to send your children there, you pay the tuition. It's not funded by, tax dollars. So we already have that in place. I guess maybe I missed a part, but what are we just trying to strengthen that foundation, or what are we trying to accomplish with this bill, Senator Campion? Because I already thought it sort of is already in place that we're not paying for kids to go to these Catholic or private religion schools.
So this probably wouldn't impact, I don't think, your schools at all unless you're not in a choice district. So correct me if I'm wrong, Jim. This is we're saying these are schools that if you're in a choice district, you will now be able to. Right now, you're able to take your choice dollars to a religious institution, and we are getting sort of mixed things happening out there. Some people are saying yes, some districts are saying no. This would give some clarifying language to make sure that schools know under what circumstances districts know under what circumstances they could be sending and to what schools. Does that make sense, Jim?
Well, let me reframe that answer a little bit if I could. Certain schools in Rutland, there are tuition districts nearby, right? And they could send their kids to private schools in Rutland. Also, if you're a public operating school, you can send, if the district allows it, you can send your child to a different school outside the district, pay for with tuition dollars, public tuition dollars. So, for example, a school that operates schools, a district that operates schools, maybe it doesn't have a program that a child wants, but maybe it's over there in an independent school. So both for operating schools in more narrow circumstances and for tuition districts, they can send students to independent schools. Under current law, they, as you mentioned, in Rutland, the religious schools, parents are paying out of their own pockets for those programs.
Right.
because school districts have been saying we can't provide funds to religious schools. But that's not what the Vermont Supreme Court said. Vermont Supreme Court said that you can provide tuition to religious schools if there is a safeguard that those schools aren't using that funding for religious instruction. So imagine that the school in Rutland, the Catholic school in Rutland, has a system that says, okay, we're going to take public tuition, but we're going to use that to pay our physics teacher or our gym teacher or whatever. We're not going to use that to pay for religious instruction. We're going to use that in these other areas that are not for that purpose. That is permitted under the Vermont Constitution and under the Chittenden case. But what's happening today is districts are saying no, because you're a religious school, you can't do that, and that is unconstitutional. So this is a way to thread that and basically give guidance to school districts to not say no, but to say yes if you have safeguards in place. And the way to do that is through a certification. So with this change, Rutland, or let's say Chittenden is a tuition town. Chittenden could pay tuition to your Catholic school in Rutland if the Catholic school in Rutland gives a certification to Chittenden School District that funds are not being used for religious instruction, worship, or propagation. So we change what's happening on the ground now.
Okay, so that helps a lot. So let me just pitch a scenario. I live in Rutland town, so we don't have a high school. So I had school choice. I could have went to Rutland or Proctor, West Rutland, or wherever. I could have gone to Mount St. Joseph's in Rutland if I wanted to. And right now, per Vermont Constitution, Vermont law would have authorized the tuition to be paid to MSJ on my behalf.
If they could certify that it's not being used for religious use, yes.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's been issued since 1999. But as I say, there's been no guidance issued since that date. So school districts have been on their own.
I think this is maybe Senator Hooker knows more, but I think this is a sort of a hidden secret to most people. I mean, I've never heard of this before. You just live around here with Catholic schools. You know, if you're going to the Catholic school, you know your parents are paying for it, or you're going to the public school. So this is interesting to me.
But wasn't that one of the cases that was brought up in Chittenden? I mean, I know that there was discussion about whether or not the kids from Barstow could go to MSJ.
Yeah. So the case that came up was Chittenden back in 1999, which was exactly Chittenden involved actually going to, I think, Mount St. Joseph. So yes, that was the case actually. And there have been a number of cases since. And a year ago or so, the Supreme Court in the Espinoza case said that you cannot discriminate against religious schools based upon their status. And that's what's been happening in Vermont. So the kind of urgency around this, if you will, is that we are not well placed right now to get on the right side of the line. And giving some guidance to districts as to how to do this in a way that is constitutional is the purpose that this bill would serve.
Is that helpful, Senator Terenzini? Yeah, okay. Jim, given that the Espinoza case, that was a federal case.
Yes,
are basically all the states right now in the union dealing with this same kind of thing? I mean, well, maybe not grappling with it or trying to do what we're doing, but if you're in Wyoming, has this opened up, that Espinoza case has opened up a similar opportunity situation where they too can say, if their version of Rutland Town in Wyoming can now send their kids to their version of the Catholic school in Rutland?
Yeah, so what's happened, interesting, I think the Espinoza case dealt with Montana law, actually. And I think I mentioned in my slideshow a while ago, many states adopted the so-called mini Blaine amendments in the 1800s. which were amendments to the Constitution called no aid provisions. Those provisions said the state shall provide no aid to religious organizations. Okay, and the Supreme Court found that's discrimination based upon status. That's what it said. So it struck down essentially the Montana Constitution provision. And likewise, states that have that provision was adopted as an anti-Catholic thing back in the 1800s. And so many states have that provision. We don't. We've got our compelled use provision, which is around how you use funding. So we're in a much better place in terms of constitutional law in Vermont. We are consistent with the U.S. Supreme Court. But in practice, we're not. Because in practice, school districts have been denying public funding to these schools based on their stats. So while we're okay constitutionally, right now, we're not okay on the ground. And that's what this is designed to cure.
Okay. Senator Hooker.
Thank you. Jim, with regard to the certification, I know that, we're as long as they can certify that they're not going to use it for religion-based studies or payment to staff and all of that. What else would that include? I mean, how do they have to itemize, each of the things that they're not going to use it for? And what do we have any sense or parameters around what are those functions, those religious functions? I mean, talking about the possibility of offering, say, a survey of a comparative religion, that would be okay. But hiring someone to teach theology would not. Is that correct?
Yeah, it does leave the language in the draft bill now leaves it quite open and vague, for sure. And that was a recommendation of Professor Teachout because he was worried about going down the other avenue, trying to define all these parameters in terms of segregation of funds and things like that. So his idea was keep it simple, make it a certification, which has been accepted by the courts. But it does open the question as to, is there some audit that's done after the fact to find out how they use the funds? Is there some control? I mean, you're basically relying on the honesty of the school to certify. So you might decide to, pad that out a bit and have some audit work done or have some parameters. But his recommendation was keep it simple and just do this. But it's up to you, of course, what you do.
But that then begs the question of, blended funds and separate accounts from tuition coming from public schools.
Yep.
Okay.
It is very much, it sounds like the honest, the honor policy here, please do this. And we hope that, you'll abide by what we're saying. I still worry a little, we'll get into the anti-discrimination stuff. Senator Perschlick and then Senator Lyons.
That was going to be my question about the anti-discrimination stuff, if we were going to get into that or not.
Yeah. I think that's going to be next after we finish up with other questions. Senator Lyons?
That's also my question, but a comment that, gee, I really hope we can trust religious schools.
Yeah.
Seriously.
Yeah. No,
the moral fiber.
Right. So before we do go to anti-discrimination, is there a way to, so let's talk about the teaching of science, for example. Should we say that science has to be followed by the Vermont standards? If, creationism versus the teaching of, evolution. I mean, are there things there that are concerning to you, Jim?
Well, I I guess what I'm thinking about this from, I'm trying to not go into policy and into your jobs. I'm trying to tread a line here, if you will. What I see is the courts are facing bad records. They only decide what's in the record. Right now, the records are showing decisions by school districts that are based upon not providing funds based on status. So the goal here might be short-term goal, do something quickly to get the record in a better place. So of course have a record that you've taken action, you give them guidance, it's mandatory, and at least they have a record so they know that we're not discriminating on that basis. Whether you go further and add anti-discrimination language or various other conditions, if you do that, my fear, frankly, is that you're going to bog this bill down so much that it might not make it through, and we're going to have the same record we have today the courts are looking at. So you can always take on the discrimination point at a future time in terms of what schools have to comply with. But so I was separating that conversation in my mind a little bit because I was just concerned that addition could really affect the likelihood of this fix being put in place in a short-term way to create a better record for the courts for Vermont.
Are you particularly concerned with, us getting something through the Senate, the House, and the governor's signature if it has the anti-discrimination? Because I feel that I wouldn't personally, I feel pretty confident that we would be okay there.
Well, I guess my concern is more around constitutional issues. So I think once you start adding those things in, you raise a host of other issues that have to be dealt with. So, for example, we talked before about applying labor laws to religious schools and the exception they have for people who are considered to be kind of ministerial function. So in the U.S. Constitution, as interpreted by the Supreme Court, there is an exception where those schools can discriminate against an individual who's an employee, and they can discriminate on the basis of age, of sexual preference. That's protected by the Constitution. So if you try to add that as a condition here, you're up against the constitutional issue there. And I don't know, as we talked about before, we've got the anti-discrimination laws in Vermont based on public accommodation. And I'm not clear in my mind whether those laws apply to private schools or don't, because it's not clear to me that they're open to the general public because they're private schools. So I think if you add that provision, maybe it's okay, but I think you have to hear from the right advocates around those laws to figure out how they apply or don't apply, what the issues are. So I think it gets a lot more complicated once you go down that path, because it raises other issues. I'm not saying it's not a good idea from a policy standpoint. I'm just saying it raises other issues.
That's helpful. I wonder, and then Senator Hooker, if we've heard from Professor Teach Out, which was helpful. I'm not questioning his skills or talents, but wonder if we should also hear from another constitutional expert, and that's just something that maybe we can talk about in terms of possibly finding one or just getting another opinion. Senator Hooker.
I don't know if this has to do with anti-discrimination or what, but would this be open to every religious school? Or are there some kind of parameters around? Well, I guess it would be discrimination if we didn't open it to everyone. But you have some people who open a school with certain religious intent, and it may just be in somebody's house, and kids are going to that school, and they would have to be recognized, correct? Under
More than recognized. So schools which are eligible for public tuition, whether you're sectarian or secular or wherever, have to be approved by the AOE.
So they
To
have
be
to
approved
be.
by the AOE, they've got a bunch of standards for approval based upon academics and teaching, and so you have to be approved first. And some of the religious schools are approved, like Rice Memorial is approved, even though it doesn't take public tuition because it wants the status of being approved. But in order to take public tuition, you have to be approved. So it can't be anybody, it has to be an approved independent school.
Okay. And that, of course, has to comply with all kinds of regulations to be approved. Because we do have another religious school in Rutland that is, has been running for quite some time. I'm not sure what their status is.
Senator Perslick, anything? Or your
No,
question?
I'm still interested in the state's interest in ensuring that these schools that are getting public funds aren't discriminating. And maybe that's through a public accommodation, portal, if you want to call it that. So I guess I'm just saying I'm interested in that conversation to hear more about that. And is there anything the state can do about that?
Yeah, no, I too am interested. Senator Lyons?
Yeah, but I do think that once you consider anti-discrimination for the institution, then there is, let me just ask this question, there is no requirement that the institution accept or allow for any certification to receive the public dollars. So they wouldn't have to do that. I mean, they wouldn't have to, right? I'm asking Jim that question.
So under this bill, any school, any independent school, any approved independent school, whether secular or sectarian, would have to certify that they're not using the funds for.
Right, but they don't have to accept any funds. There's
No,
no
they don't
reason.
have to.
So then if there is an anti-discrimination policy embedded in our bill, then independent schools say, well, look, what we want to continue doing what we're doing, period. End of conversation. Then the question is who suffers from that? Then the kids don't have the opportunities. But it also then it also says that they're discriminating against kids. So it's that circular argument. It's just pretty horrific.
Well, it sounds like it would be if the school said, if we said you needed to follow the state's anti-discrimination policy and the religious school said, no, we won't accept out LGBTQ teachers. We, will have students, we kind of have that policy, then they would just have to find another school to go to, basically, if that's, their choice district might, if we, let's just take, you go to Proctor or Burton Academy instead of the religious school.
So the question is, do we want to look at anti-discrimination?
Do you think, Jim, it makes sense, and committee members, but Jim, you might know more on this. Does it make sense for us to talk? Who else does it make sense for us to have this conversation with while we're making a decision? For example, does it make sense for us to have the Attorney General? And does it make sense for us, to hear from other individuals in particular?
Well, I think the Human Rights Commission, right? They're the ones who administer the accommodations law. So definitely from them. Labor, the expert in the Office on Labor Issues is Damian Leonard. So if you want to hear more about that exception that we talked about in labor law, he'd be helpful. AG, I'm not sure. AG's been involved in some of these cases, so you might want to get their perspective. I'm not sure.
Chris Curtis from that office might be somebody who might be helpful there. Senator Lyons, were you gonna?
Oh, no, I was thinking, Bryn Hare's been really helpful to me in looking at constitutional issues, and I'm
Great.
wondering if what your thoughts are with another ledge council on constitutional issues. I mean, as compared with Peter Teachout, it's kind of difficult. That's a question for you, Jim.
I'm not sure that Bryn covers this area specifically.
Okay.
The lawyer that covers the accommodation laws is David Hall.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Whew.
So, I'm sorry, did I interrupt, Senator Lyons? Were you going to have to say something else? Okay. So I will, if it looks like perhaps the committee is interested in hearing then more information on whether or not we should include anti-discrimination language if we were, going forward. So we will go ahead and we will I will reach out and work with Jeannie, who and continue some testimony. In terms of this, the urgency of this, Jim, this is something that you think, in your professional opinion, we need to do something with this session, this year.
Well, I can't say it that way because it's on my role to tell you that. I am just seeing that the record before these courts,
they're
looking at these cases, it's not very good because the record is now based upon status. And districts haven't had the guidance they need. So if you want to have a better record going forward, for the courts to consider, this is a step to take. This is a option to take in that regard.
Yeah. And it sounds like also I will talk with Senator Sears a little bit also this weekend to see if maybe, as we're working on this, they might want to have their eyes on it either early, or if they'd rather wait until we vote something out and then kick it down their way for them to have a look before it makes its way to the floor, which I would feel good about. Jim, anything else from you? This very helpful. We had jumped into this a little bit, challenging topic. And I will work with Jeannie to bring some additional perspectives in next week. Senators, anything else on this? Or anything else for the week before we say goodbye to one another for a few days? Senator Perschlick.
We could use the term science-based religious instruction.
We could.
Oh. Do I hear evolution?
Just tie it in with the literacy. Science-based, everything will be science-based.
Yeah.
Evidence-based religion. Evidence-based would really be the coolest, right?
Wait a minute. They're all based on faith.
Exactly.
Right. All right. Nothing else on this. Nothing else on any other topics. Please, I'm going to jump in soon after this and try to finish up what I'm going to talk to Senator Kitchell about, and we'll send it all off to you for your okays or your edits. And feel free, as usual, please edit freely. And if you want to call and talk about it, that's great too. So, okay. Thanks, everybody. I really
thank
appreciate it.
you.
Thank you. Jim, thank you.
Thank you.
Send your vaccine questions in, please.
Will do. Happy
Yeah.
Valentine's Day, everybody.
Oh, happy Valentine's Day.
Valentine's
Take care.
Day.